Joe. I'm Kevin. That's Joe. And let's talk about adventure. Setting off on new adventures when you're set in your ways, right? I think it gets more challenging, Joe, to say, because, look, we've been pulled and yanked around the whole, right? We know roles, expectations, first adulthood is all like meeting obligations. Sure, there's some discovery of new things and adventures, but I'd say as you get to the part of the journey where you're approaching the middle passage, we talked about in the last episode, just wanting some time, some solitude, some solace. And so let's say now you've achieved that, or if you're still in a busy place, but things are feeling stale, um, you got to find and go after some new experiences, some new adventures. We know that neurologically it creates new pathways that keeps your brain healthy, and it just makes for a more gratifying life. Um, so, Joe, you talked about in the last episode going on a trip by yourself, something you'd never done before. That was certainly a new adventure. What are other ways that you kind of make sure you keep the adventure high in your life?
I One of the things I did was getting a ontological coaching certification.
Mm,
So I did a program of something that I was specifically interested in and made that investment in myself, and it was transformative.
tell me about that.
Learning about somatic dispositions, essentially. So ontology is the metaphysical study of being, our being, right? Our body, emotions, and language. So I went at a super, super deep level into understanding how our somatics, right? Our body language, what
Mm-hmm.
makes up the body, uh, plays a role in terms of communication and how it plays a role in our emotional makeup and all that. So then we dove super deep into emotions. We did a practice called linguistic deconstruction of emotions.
Wow.
So basically, most of the time, all of us just run on happy, sad, angry, glad, or whatever. Like there's
Right.
like four or five things that we always are. Or one of my other favorite ones, which isn't even really emotion, but I'm fine. Yeah, we know there's nothing wrong, buddy. But diving deeper into understanding emotions, like we talked about last episode, was loneliness.
Yeah.
How much do people really explore what all that is? And it's freaking, we just did an old episode on it. It's deep,
Right.
but so again, diving deeper into being able to name and claim these emotions is what I'm experiencing in life, right?
Yeah.
And then, understanding how these emotions surface in your body. If you ever heard somebody like, damn, every time I get pissed off, my knee starts to hurt.
Yeah. Right.
Like, what is that? Or whatever. Like anytime like I'm sad or something, like my elbow start,
Shoulder pain. Yeah.
yeah, or shoulder pain, like people know that, or like my head gets hot or whatever. It's like all these things are connected. And then,
Yeah.
lastly, you kind of wrap it up together with the language part, right? Which is our thoughts and, our internal and external conversations. So essentially how we talk to ourselves and how we communicate with the world. And um went super deep into all that. And of course that's not only just for personal development, but also as somebody that's an executive leadership, that's incredibly powerful from a
Yeah.
professional standpoint because of all the training with that involved with organizational leadership. Because if you can do all that work with the individual, you can do that work with a team, right? And
Yeah.
you can shift culture and the collective consciousness of businesses just the same as you do with yourself. So
Yeah.
I got into that. I started getting heavily into weightlifting, something that I always wanted to do because I was always like the little guy. Uh,
Mm.
and then, like that, traveling more, I started doing a lot more. I started getting into writing again. So again, all these things just getting out of my comfort zone. Also,
Yeah.
a big one was shifting careers. I had a
Yeah.
huge career transition from the restaurant world, getting laid off in 2020, moving into the entrepreneurial space and the internet marketing industry, but solely in operations. So helping marketers and visionaries like yourself grow and scale their businesses.
Right. Let me ask you what um the ontological training, what did that look like? Did you physically go to a building? Was it all online? How did it go down?
So this was back in 2018. So this was before COVID. And so it was a 5 day seminar in person. It changed my life. It was an 8 month program. You'll love this. It was an 8 month program. The whole first 4 months was all unlearning and
Mm.
relearning how to learn.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So coupled with ontology, we also learned epistemology, which is the study of learning and
Mm-hmm.
how people learn. Because if you understand how you learn and how others learn, then that's how you can actually change. Because until you learn to do better, you won't ever do better. Or if you don't learn how to do different, you won't do different. You have to learn this shit, right? So
Yeah.
we basically unlearned how we had been learning all along,
Damn.
which I touched a little bit on it the last episode towards the end.
Yeah.
But essentially, we're raised in an educational system that it totally indoctrinates us into a way of thinking and a way of being that's totally totally sideways. It
Yeah.
creates an addiction to answers. It's not actually learning, it's memorization. You're graded on the
Right.
quality of your answers, not on the quality of your questions. And, you basically are stuck in a way of knowing.
Yeah.
And if you're out in the world and you're awakened to the realization of this, you'll see how much people go around showing everyone how much they know
Yeah.
and how much they have to know, and that they have a total inability to say, I don't know.
Right.
Even though for us at midlife, putting your hand up and finally saying, shit, I don't know what to do here. Well,
It's
that
my
then opens you up to all sorts of other questions that were
Yeah.
previously you were blind to.
And holy shit, you might learn something.
Yeah.
I got to say, my thought as you were describing the process, it's dangerous because if you're in the unlearning phase of this journey and somehow you can't finish the school or it like goes under, you're just like fucked. You're just like, okay, now I unlearned how I learned, but I have no idea what to do now. You know what I mean? Like that'd be the worst kind of education to only half-ass. It would be you're almost, this just made me laugh. But damn, dude. And so what is that like to unlearn what you've been, because yeah, you sort of like unconsciously going about what believe is it equal parts getting past your ego of feeling like you need to have answers and know things, and how much of it is more like practically psychological?
Well, number one, I'll say I was at a bit more of an advantage than other people were because I was just such a huge piece of shit that whole time in my life. Like
So
I
you had no attachment to what you had known or been doing.
No, what I mean is as far as school, like I
Oh,
was D's and F's in
oh,
school,
didn't learn
barely ever
shit.
went. I didn't learn
Yeah,
shit. I realized at a very young age that school actually wasn't about learning. It was about schooling.
sure, right,
And
yeah,
that's why I hated going to schools because Like, what is all this shit?
Saw behind the
And then,
curtain. Yeah.
everybody else that I was there with, prestigious colleges and all this. I'm a high school dropout with GED and a couple of college classes.
Me too.
It wasn't the full indoctrination that most people were,
Right.
right? And then if you're talking full indoctrination, maybe you're looking at doctors where we go to get answers from them.
Right.
That's got to be a
Their
terrible
job
place
to know
to
the
be.
answers.
It's their
Yeah.
job to know.
Yeah.
But in actuality, they don't even
They
know.
don't know shit.
Yeah, exactly. As we've already found out.
Don't become
So,
friends with a doctor. You'll be so fucking scared.
so I think, but what I would say is in terms of this topic, as far as stepping out of my comfort zone, I would say that it did hit me hard where I did feel cheated because I was like, damn, man, I spent a lot of time on a bunch of meaningless shit because everyone else said it was important. And none of it had, not a lot of it, not none of it, but not a lot of it had anything to do with me learning about myself and what my gifts are to the world and being able then to make huge contributions to the world with that gift.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Sure.
you have everything is piled upon you of what you're supposed to be.
Right. And you're just probably your overriding reality is that shit, nothing's working. Nothing I'm doing is working. It's working the opposite of how something would work. It's bringing strife, consternation, destruction to myself and everybody around me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, let me ask you this. And I certainly could relate to that point that you were at where you're talking last episode about when you wanted to transition out of comedy,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, well, like what was leading up to that big change?
Yeah.
And now I know you have, other big things going on in your life right now that are huge ways you're stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
So, I mean, tell me about those and like why you're stepping out of that right now.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting going back to comedy because when I think back to me in my 20s, I was good at asking questions. I loved learning. So I had that going for me. But I had very low confidence, being an entrepreneur now and realizing way too late that, oh, as a comedian, I was an entrepreneur. I had a business I was supposed to be running. Thank God there was not Xbox back then. I really wouldn't have. I would have missed shows. It's the one thing I only missed 2 shows ever. One I crashed my car trying to make my friends laugh, and in the other one I was in jail. So you can save those stories. But um, the only wisdom I think I really had about life, first of all, I remember through the moment. Uh, and people say this happens around 25. I was exactly 25, and it occurred to me for the first time in my life that I might live to be old. I mean, literally for the first time ever in my life. Holy shit. What if I'm like, oh my God. It was like, I couldn't believe it. This was a big deal. I might, what do I, and maybe from there, at the time I'm on the road, I was working with some comics who I loved and love to this day, still at it, in me at 25, they're maybe 50, approaching 50. And I'm like, oh, this is fucking sad. This old guy is stuck doing this. What else could he possibly do if he decided this isn't working out? He is nothing, you know? And so I think I kind of made a mental note, like, man, give yourself to 30. And if some shit ain't clicking at 30, you need to maybe rethink this, which is not the way to go all in on a craft, frankly. Like there should be no plan B, but also you got to start growing up at some point, you know? And so then, it's just, dude, I'll tell you what really clicked it. This might be helpful. I decided in what I wanted from show business was evolving, as I went. Started with just wanting to laugh, wanting attention. And then I got more into the producing side of it. in little instances, like for instance, this guy offered me, he's like, what would you do if you could do anything in show business? I said, I would start an all comedy radio network. Dude, this is like 94, 5, way before Sirius XM or any such thing. I just had this concept, like, wouldn't that be cool? So he goes, okay, let's make a pilot. And so I got together with my friends, 3 of my comedian friends, and we hand wrote, I still have the script. So we were recording like little demos of what the breaks would be and interviews and things. And I just had more fun and found that more fulfilling than anything I'd done on stage. And I thought, oh, I think I'm a writer. I think I want to write comedy. I want to learn how to do that. And then a couple of years later, a friend of mine got a sitcom deal with NBC. And we were so naive that the show was literally his name. His name's Tom Rhodes. The show was Mr. Rhodes. And I was really good at writing jokes in Tom's voice. And Tom said, I want you to be my writer on the show. I just want you to represent my voice in the writer's room. And I was like, oh my God, dream come true. I'm going to go be a sitcom writer. The show hadn't even shot the pilot yet. This is how naive we were. He was only under a development deal. I moved to fucking, dude, everything that I can fit into my 88, 86 Delta 88, my Oldsmobile Delta 88. And I move across country, like the well of above the tire, just like if I hit a bump, it would scrape. It's a fucking car so weighted down all the way across the country, bro. And God, I didn't need to get to the spare tire. That would have sucked. But get out there. The show does make the pilot, does get picked up. And he's like, okay, well, when does my buddy start? You said I could have a writer. They're like, yeah, about that. We need to kind of see how he writes. And it's like, wait, what? So anyway, I don't get the gig. The deal was, we don't have a place for you this season, but if it gets picked up, Tom will have the clout to get you that job. The showrunner's telling me this. Fair enough. Show does not get picked up. The whole point being, but Tom put me on his payroll just to like basically be his assistant. So I was on set every week. I was this close to what I thought was my dream. And I'm like looking through the door of the writer's room and I'm like, oh, it doesn't look fun. That's not the fantasy I had in my head. These guys are stressed out. They're doing rewrites till 4 a.m. There's no laughter. It sucked. They're not getting paid shit. I'm like, damn, I don't think I want this. And so every new adventure usually comes from only knowing you don't want something. And in fact, I had a fateful meeting with the actress who played Mrs. Kravitz on Bewitched, the second Mrs. Kravitz. Like an angel came into my life at a car wash, sitting at a car wash in North Hollywood. And she heard my story. And then before we parted, she said, I'm going to give you some advice my husband used to like to give to people. Sometimes in life, to find what you want, you have to start with what you don't want.
Ooh.
I mean, so simple, but it just struck me like a lightning bolt. And I thought, I know for fucking sure, I don't want to live in LA broke ass like this. Dude, LA is brutal on the broke because all around you, there's people with crazy money and there's no middle class. It's one of the fucking other, you know? And so anyway, packed my shit again, left. First time in my life I ever left a place with no plan for where I was going, purely just moving away from it, not towards it. That was wild. And this will become relevant in a second. In that searching for, well, who am I now? What does all this mean? And I'm 28, 27, dude. So this is not quite the middle passage, but kind of a first edition of it in my life. I thought the only thing I know for sure is that I love this woman, Michelle. And I've already probably lost her, but I need to go find out if we can be together because it's the only thing I'm pretty sure about. And so she ended up visiting and then moving to Chicago. We got married there. And for me, it was like, okay, that was the new life. I'm not going to try to start a family and be a road comic. I've seen that movie and it sucks. And so that was what led to the first adventure and change. And now here we are on the other side of that. And I just, dude, Tuesday of this week, packed my car once again with all my shit and moved to another house. And so this pattern is emerging and continuing, kind of goes back to the solitude and the things we mentioned before. Change will come in your life. It will start with feelings. It will start with questions, as we love to say on the show. And if you embrace those questions and don't pretend to know the answers, but know they're out there, if you make space for them and go on that faith, you will have no problem having new adventures. But there'll be times in life when everything in you is telling you this is a bad idea. If there's a way to stop feeling the way you're feeling, you better find it because you're about to make life way fucking harder than it needs to be. And that's this edition of My Middle Passage. And so the question, to bring it back full circle, is when you have a ton of space, as I now do, how do you sort of force yourself and choose what new adventures? It could be something as simple as fucking pickleball, camping, kayaking. My therapist keeps telling me, he's like, dude, volunteer. Just go volunteer, do a beach cleanup. You'll meet people, even if you just spend a day with people, you're all on a mission together. It'll be very fulfilling, and you may end up creating a new friend group or join a fucking dart league or something. I think it can be as simple as that, just knowing you need some adventure and not being too persnickety about what it is.
Dude, start a podcast about men in the passage.
That's a great idea, dude. That is
Maybe
that
we
I
should
can
fucking
embrace.
do that.
You're right. There you go. Also recognize the adventures you're having.
Yeah, this Carl Jung quote kept coming up for me towards the end when you were talking, and he says, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart.
Mm.
Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes."
Mm.
So
Damn.
the biggest thing is that he's trying to teach all of us is that by looking inward, which you can only do, well, not only, but primarily do in solitude, which we covered on the last episode, that's ultimately what's going to lead to that awakening and the clear understanding of what it is that you really want, right? And
Yeah.
that's the process of by which that you can transform the second half of your life, like we're talking about. And so it's like when you're talking about all of that, I'm just thinking of or when you ended there, I'm thinking like, man, like that's exactly what you did. So no wonder why, even though like you're way outside of your comfort zone and way outside of even feeling comfortable at all,
Yeah.
there's still like this kind of inkling back there of some semblance of peace because
Yeah.
you know that you're honoring the dignity of your own self, right?
Mm.
And there's
Mm.
just something to be said about that, where it was like I was saying, when I took that trip and everyone's giving us
Yeah.
shit about what we need to be doing. Everyone has a pretty good opinion about what you need to be doing in your
Yeah.
life so that they can feel okay.
That's right.
So, yeah, well let me ask you this. Uh because I think a lot of times everyone can look at midlife and say, "Oh, midlife crisis."
Yeah.
But also all the things that we're talking about that we're doing all the things that your therapist is even mentioning, all the things that you're looking to explore that are more childlike and maybe a little bit more whimsical than just the hammer nail of basic life. Well, that those are midlife, those are adventures.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's outside of your comfort zone, but like it's also like, so let me ask you this. What are some things that have been coming up for you that you've been identifying lately that you're like, you know what? I really want to fucking do that.
Mm. Um, explore cultures. I want to visit
What do you mean?
I want to visit other countries and immerse for a little while, a month. I would love to say next year, say I'm going to visit 3 countries. I'm going to spend a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks in each of them. Just number one for the adventure, for the experience. But I'm really curious about what is out in the world and how differently people live than we do here in the US. You and I both traveled to Europe, and it's startling how different society is, even in Europe, um, even in places like London, which are basically the US is modeled on, like New York, Paris. But man, you get into just how long the dinners are in Italy. I've heard Spain, the same thing. It's a 3-hour event. Don't show up hungry. Like but everybody does it at the same time every day because that's how they exist. I wonder, we were talking about so much about loneliness in the last episode. I wonder how uniquely US of a epidemic that is.
Mm.
Because in other cultures, you just accept that I'm around people all the time. I'm sure obviously people still have personalities and people choose maybe to be alone more, but not like here where we're the truth is, dude, our lives are so fucking comfortable here. I think that's a big part of our problem. And I know that sounds shitty to say when there's so much disparity and inequality of income and things, and it is not comfortable for a lot of people. But for middle class and above, to hear the things that are on people's mind at the next table over at Sonny's barbecue, like I did the other day, I'm just like, you've got life fucking licked, and all you can do is bitch about traffic or bitch about this and that. And it was it Eleanor Roosevelt who said, small minds talk about people, medium minds talk about events, and big minds talk about ideas. How often do you hear people talking about ideas when you're eavesdropping, intentionally or unintentionally? Rarely. In our business, we do, because we're an idea business. But in society, I think I got a little off track here, but I think it, even I face that now a little bit. It's like I just have to agree to it because look, the probably the strangest and hardest thing of, not the hardest thing, but one of the things, I chose solitude, but my social fabric has been stripped away. The social fabric that my wife and I built and our family was a part of for all these years. It's not that I'm not welcome there, but it's different. And in any, do you know that I just read this, Joe? Gray divorce is now a term in a thing. Have you heard of this?
No, what is that?
It literally came on my radar last night. People over 50 getting divorced. The rate of has tripled since 1990. 1990, it was 8.7%. Now it's 36% of couples. And we're talking decades long marriages. And so here I am feeling like I'm in this super unique situation, and I'm part of a stat that's now, there's tons of articles about it. And obviously it's there's new complications around it. And one of them is that it's very hard to start a new social circle at this age because everybody is attached to your old lifestyle. Parents of other kids and You know, like all of our great lifelong friends are people we met from schools that our kids are going to. And these are important people in my life, and God bless them all. They've been supportive and they're still friends. But my wife is the conduit to those relationships. And she's very social. And so she naturally has kept up those relationships. And I've been in my hole over here, really not talking much to anybody except for you. In my team, and and so I'm going to have to work on, just like we were talking about in the last episode, about practice solitude, practice silence, practice energy awareness. I am going to almost have to force myself in the other direction and say, practice being the new guy at things, which is always such a valuable thing. Just to isolate that for a second. I think the last time I was really the new guy at something was when I went to there was a combat fitness gym, a martial arts gym down the street from where we lived. And I was really curious, and I went in there and I joined some classes. And it's so healthy, obviously physically, but mentally, to be the brand new person and stick with something for even 60 days, because by about like week 2, you're no longer the new person. And then another new person comes in, and you can see how their body language and how they're like uncomfortable. And you're like, let me help you out, kid. You know, grab these gloves. And, it's like, it's so reassuring that, damn, like this is how fast life can evolve and how quickly we can grow into something new. And all we had to do was just walk in the building once and then keep walking into it and showing up.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up, because one of the biggest themes of that training, the ontological training that I did, was being okay with being a beginner.
Mm, yeah.
Because if you always know everything, you're not a beginner.
Yeah.
And making a declaration that I'm a beginner and it's okay to be a beginner
Yeah.
actually allows the process of new learning to take place.
Right.
Without that declaration that I'm the FNG, or I'm the beginner, well, you're never going to learn anything,
Right. It's
because you
impossible.
won't let anything in.
Right.
Like you're just going to sit there. And so, like, I mean, my biggest thing that I would say to you right now is, like, great, man. Like, where are you going? When are these planned for? Like, start pursuing that shit. Like, oh, great. Yeah, cool. You're going to travel next year. Awesome, dude. Where are you going?
Yeah.
When's it planned for?
Put it on the
What are
calendar.
you doing? What are you going to do while you're there? Awesome. What are you going to see? Because, like, it's it like you've already identified it.
Yeah.
Now it's like time to start pursuing the new adventure. And
Yeah.
that's what this is, man.
Yeah.
That's the exciting part. Yeah, one part of it is like, I got to deal with this, and there's loneliness and emptiness, and everything I've done up until this point in my first adulthood feels like a lie almost, and it's unfulfilling, and it's all these things. But one of my favorite Lao Tzu quotes is, often new beginnings are disguised as painful endings.
Mm,
And it's like, I feel like we're just wired to just grab on to the shit that we find meaningful and hold on. I just need one more hit of it. Like, you're like this. We're like with attachment, we're like these addicts. Come on, man.
yeah.
One more. Come on. I want to squeeze one more memory out of it, or one more little feel. And it's
Yeah.
like, but the more that I stay in that space of attachment, I'm blocking myself off to what could be. I'm blocking off myself to growth. I'm blocking myself off to the new adventures. And I do that. And one of the things that I've assessed about myself is over the years, that space between when something ends and I start something new has shrunk.
Mm.
Because that purgatory shit, you know, like I
Hmm.
hate that shit. You know, people
Hmm.
are like, well, whenever one door closes, another door opens. And it's like, yeah, fuck you, you know, because this wait in the hallway sucks, bro. It sucks. And so like what I've always tried to do is say, okay, yes, this door is closing, and that's okay. Because regardless of how I feel about it is meaningless to the fact of whether or not it happened or not. And all of my peace and serenity that I hope for on a daily basis is contingent upon my ability to accept that reality. And then every moment that I stay stuck on that space of attachment, then I'm robbing myself of the energy to step into something new, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
and and again, like nobody's perfect. This shit ain't easy. And I'm also not saying that I don't ever, like, if it's like significant loss, well, it's
Yeah.
important to stop and pay tribute to that loss and
Yeah.
go through the grieving process and bow down in reverence to the meaningful impact this had on my life and feel the sadness. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, oh, we need to
Yeah.
jerk around. But what I'm saying is that, like, you can't just sit there forever. You can't
Right.
stay stuck. You stop there, you smell the roses, and you keep moving, you
Yeah.
know? And
And
so, like, for me, like, I just went through it, Kevin. I just went through it. I went through some heart shit in the last year. You know, a year ago, I got sick, which I rarely get sick, but I ended up getting like this really bad lung infection.
mm,
And
like pneumonia.
no, it wasn't pneumonia. It was just a viral infection. But when I went to the urgent care, because I imagine I'm like most men on the planet where I just avoid doctors like the plague, but, or I'm an internet doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I got this.
WebMD.
I'll
I'm
research
WebMD.
this shit.
It's
Yeah.
like now I have cancer. Like, um, but it's like I go and my blood pressure is like super high.
Mm.
And so, like, the whole appointment about this lung infection with this doctor that was there, and she was super cool and patient with me, is she said, hey, like, if this your blood pressure's super high, and it could be as a result of your body fighting this infection, but you're gonna probably be better in 3 or 4 days. If you need to get a heart rate monitor, a blood pressure monitor, and you need to take your blood pressure and blah blah blah. If it's not better in a week or two, you need to call a cardiologist.
Yeah.
And it was like that in an instant, right?
Yeah.
And then my freaking whole life changed. I've just now, 11 months later, am feeling back to full normal. It's
Wow.
been like a full journey. So that's a thing in midlife of like
Oh yeah.
dealing with all the damage I did to my
Yeah.
body. It's like resurfacing. It's like, oh yeah, great. You wanted to pound that stuff up your nose for a
Yeah.
decade, buddy? Well,
Yeah.
when you're 42, we're gonna make that.
It's just been
So
waiting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, oh,
Price
so,
tag dangling in your cells. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, Kevin, I did a number on my body. It took 14 years
Hmm.
for my liver to heal.
Wow. Is that with care and treatment or just letting it reprocess itself?
That's with focused attention on eating
Diet
habits,
and yeah. Hmm.
diet,
Hmm.
exercise, no substances in my body, nothing.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
again, that goes back to what I was saying last episode about practice. Like some of this stuff just takes time, you know?
Right.
But getting back to what we were talking about, I was a total beginner. I knew nothing about blood pressure, and I knew nothing about heart care and all of these things. And I had to research all this. And I just, but it was meaningful to me. So I was excited, and it was, you're trying to
Interesting. And
save
yeah,
yourself. But
right.
I think the biggest thing that I learned, bro, is that that first time I was sitting in that office, I had this overwhelming feeling that I just loved living so much.
Mm,
And I wanted to be around. And I'm like,
mm,
I'm going to do whatever it takes. I just had made a decision. I'm like, I'm going to do whatever it takes here. Yeah, I'm going to beat him to death with questions and
yeah.
question Western medicine and balance it with Eastern and figure everything out. Right. But
Yeah.
for, so for me, that was very powerful because that was new for me, man. Because
Yep.
I have vivid memories of when I was a teenager wanting to end my life.
Mm,
So it's like now maybe there's guys out there, which we said in our very first episode, that men in this time right now, they're not thinking about stepping out of their comfort zone and going on new adventures. They're saying, you know what? Fuck this shit,
right.
you
Too
know?
much. Too much.
So it's
Gotta go.
important to discuss that, for us to discuss with ourselves and each other and whoever's listening, like, get, if you don't find something to get excited about and be a beginner at something and create a new
Yeah.
adventure for yourself, you're going to freaking, you're going to just be unfulfilled and in a hole, man.
Well, it's just like you said about paying your penance for all the abuse.
Yeah.
Uh, Depression will be your penance for not challenging yourself. And as much as you don't want to, as much as you would rather, and this is, I fight this a little now. It's like, I know how my day is going to go here in the house. One thing I've learned about myself, I, I will set an aesthetic with whatever you give me. I've got a handful of shit that I will hang up, and I will buy like little floodlights, and like lighting is critical to your environment, and I clean I'm nesting, I'm cleaning the shit out of the place I'm in, and keeping it a certain way. But that's the foundation. That isn't the result. That's like, okay, I'm set. Now it's like, get the hell out, walk out that front door and go. Yeah, good. The thing, and we have to, if somebody struggles with this, I'm really preaching to myself right now, but every time I do that, when I was in the other place, there's two bars at the end of the street, and each Friday night I went to one, and Saturday night I went to the other by myself. Took a notebook, actually preparing for the show. I'm like, okay, great. Again, because this excites me. I love doing this with you,
Yep.
and so I said, oh, well, perfect. I'm going to go sit. I'm going to plan tomorrow's show, get my thoughts together, have a couple beers, and just be surrounded by people. And then, the second night at the second place, I ran into a guy I haven't seen in years, a close friend of my brother-in-law. I always liked the guy, never really knew him. We sat for 2 hours and had a fantastic conversation.
Oh,
And
hell.
it was just so gratifying. And it was like, all I had to do was walk out of the fucking house and to have that experience. It wasn't a life-changing experience, but it really broke up the boredom and gave me food for thought. And it's that connectiveness that we need, and no matter what it looks like.
But Kevin, I think the most important thing that you're saying right now, because this is what I'm hearing, we automatically jump to a new adventure or stepping out of our comfort zone as I'm going to fucking Italy.
Exactly right.
When it could be, you know what I really want to do? I really want to sit in this house all night by myself.
Yeah.
So maybe stepping out of my comfort zone is getting out of the house, going to a couple bars, and then all of a sudden I'm awakened to something that I would have never seen possible for me had I not gotten over the fact of getting uncomfortable of leaving my own house. And sometimes it's just that simple. It's
Yeah.
not I'm flying to Europe. It's just
Yes.
taking a step out the front door, man.
It's a big
It's
one, dude.
just picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, man, you know what? I don't feel good right now. Hey, man, I'm not feeling it right now. Hey, what are you doing? What's
Yeah.
going on with you?" Picking up the phone, stepping out the door,
Yeah.
whatever, you know?
Yep.
Because so it brings me to a James Hollis quote, man. And because again, we always kind of, you guys hear us coming back to Carl Jung and James Hollis because these are the guys that have set the tone for us before us. Okay.
Hmm.
And Hollis says to truly step into the second half of life, we must often abandon our first adulthood, the roles, identities, and expectations that shaped the first half of our lives, and pursue a new adventure, one of deeper meaning and authenticity. And so sometimes embracing the new challenge is just picking up the phone or walking out the front door to do what you don't want to do. And then magically, you're pleasantly surprised
Right.
with the outcome. So maybe next time I'm battling with myself internally about whether I'm going to call or whether I'm going to go, I can pull back and say, oh, well, last time this happened, and the likelihood that it's going to repeat the same scenario is very minimal, but it
Right.
could be something new and it could be something exciting.
Yeah. And right. You look at anything that's in your life and you reverse engineer the chain of events that led you to it. And you go, damn, it started with that thing I either didn't want to do or had no idea of until I walked into it or whatever. Right. Again, like going back to that gym, like that was a big part of my life. In my whole family, we would go on Saturdays and do the class together. It was some of my greatest memories of us as a unit. And it all started with, um, it's interesting. You'll love this. The origin of that. I was driving past the gym and I would always kind of look at it and see like, who's in there? Is it busy right now? Like I was curious about it. My daughter is still young enough, I believe, to be in her car seat in the back seat. No, she was maybe in kindergarten, maybe preschool, 4 or 5 years old. And she was saying about being in school and playing like uh, some dare game, like truth or dare or something. And I said, huh, okay. So we were having a conversation about the difference between a good dare and a bad dare. Right. And I said, a good dare is something that forces you to try something new that might feel uncomfortable, but it looks like fun and you just don't shy away from it. But you got to make sure it's safe. A bad dare is somebody you don't know dares you to do something for their enjoyment, or that can end up dangerous, and you don't need to accommodate that. Right? It's basically so. Right then, dude, we're driving past the gym. She sees me kind of glancing at it, and she says to me, "So, Dad, if I dared you to go into that gym, is that a good dare or a bad dare?"
Ooh.
Fuck. Yeah. And I said, I literally went, well, I have no choice because it's obviously a good dare. It's a safe enough place. It's uncomfortable to me because I'm not a fighter. But if I say it's a good dare and then I don't do it, I'm a hypocrite and it's not a good example. So I knew at that moment, like I have to now walk into that gym and see, you know, but that's what led to it. It's full circle of what we're talking about. It could come in any way. So if something's introduced to you, maybe again, it's just like check yourself. Like, what's your immediate thought? Is like that might be fun, but this will have. Are you going on assumption, or are you allowing for adventure? Because another thing we do, Joe, um, we get bought in to our belief system, and we look to confirm it over and over and over each day. That's the news cycle. We're able to get constant feedback. We see this in politics. We see it in sports. We see it, whatever jersey you wear, you can wake up every day and find 1,000 reasons why you're right for wearing that jersey in those colors. Um, and so there's a danger in not allowing questions and forcing yourself to be the new guy in something different.
Trust the process of life.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to be the creator of every outcome in our life.
Oh man,
I
that's
mean,
great.
how much better was it for you that you were pleasantly surprised that that guy was there and you guys hung out for 2 hours?
Yeah, it was wonderful.
I mean, to me, it just is so much more fun that way.
When
Where
you
it's
didn't.
just like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's just, I'm a planner and I'm a preparer. I mean, if it's not on my schedule, it doesn't exist in my life because I'm so damn busy and I'm like that.
yeah,
But there's a place and a time for that. But like not allowing yourself to let things unfold is really, in my opinion, just cheating yourself of what life has to offer,
yeah.
and so one of my friend one of my one of my best friends, Matt, he lives in Bali. He
Mm,
told me this in 2009. He said, Joe, God answers prayers 4 ways. He said, the first one is no, I love you too much.
mm.
And the second one is no, not yet. The third one is yes, I thought you'd never ask. And the last one is yes, and here is some more.
Mm,
And it's like whenever I look at my life and I assess things in reverse for learning, I can look at it and I can put it in those categories. And there's so many times where I didn't get exactly what I planned and wanted and worked so hard for. And it ended up being the best thing for me.
yeah,
And then there was other times in my life where I could do no wrong and everything was going my way. And it was like a freaking rain
yeah,
being put upon me like a rain dance. And it was just like so much stuff coming my way that I had no idea I was ever going to be able to be introduced to it all. You know,
yeah.
if you would have asked me a year ago when you and I first met, well, over a year ago now, that we'd be on a
Hmm.
podcast talking about midlife
Yeah,
and the transformations of both of our lives that have happened in that time frame, I would
yeah,
have laughed at you in
yeah.
your face. Yet, yet, I just won't pursue the new adventure. I still won't do it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, perhaps it's again little steps, a little
baby
instant.
steps. Yeah.
They
Practice.
some little, what's that thing of like I'm in yes mode. I'm going to say yes to shit that I would instinctively, immediately in my mind go, how do I get out of this? And just go, yeah, I'll do that. Again, hanging out with that dude randomly. If somebody would have said, hey, I'm going to meet this guy and you want to come, I probably would have said, nah, no, I'm just going to stay home. So sometimes it's like you said, just walk out the door. And when you don't have an agenda and you haven't built up in your mind whether it's how it's going to go down, one of my favorite Tom Petty lyrics is just as sure as night will turn to day, most things I worry about never happen anyway.
Mm.
They don't. So we spend all this needless time worrying and trying to protect ourselves from discomfort when really what we need is to be less comfortable.
100% of the time that I've worried, it's never changed an outcome.
Me either. Not fucking once.
Yeah, let's finish up here. I got another Hollis quote to round us out here, and he says, "We cannot always be beginners, but we can always return to the humility of being a beginner.
Mm,
The power of midlife is that it reminds us we are not finished and that life, with all its uncertainties, requires us to be willing to start again."
man, that
So
guy.
you guys, listen, So glad you joined us today. Kevin and I are incredibly grateful.
Yes, sir.
Like normal, if you got something out of this and there's somebody in your life that you know this would be valuable to them, share the show. Nothing would be more meaningful to Kevin and I than, helping other men, other people out with what we're going through and what you're going through. Kevin, too, you want to talk to him a little bit about the email we got set up as
Yeah,
well?
I think for us hearing directly from them, um, anything they, less about, it's not to stroke us. Certainly if you find it useful, but do you have questions or things that you would want discussed, or find interesting? This is really a kind of a community. I think that's our vision for it. Like we just want, not in a formal way, but just to know that it's helpful, because I think what drove us to do this, as we discussed in the first episode, is that men just don't talk about this stuff. They don't feel safe doing it. There's no outlet. They're going to almost get bullied for it. Even grown ass men stuff it away. So let's just have that conversation. Info at maninthemidddleshow.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for joining us, guys. As always, don't forget to subscribe. Love it if you could review us as well so more people could discover what's going on with men in midlife. And we'll see you next time. Kevin and Joe are out.